Here's the major differences between HEIF Max, Pro Max, and No Max. Just as a disclaimer, this applies to iPhone 14 Pros and iPhone 15 Pros. So let's start with what I'm calling No Max. You're not using any sort of raw photographic feature. No Max mode is the standard photographic mode on iPhone. It lets you apply filters, it lets you use the live photo mode, and it applies smart HDR in full blast. It also heavily compresses the images down to about 1.5 megabytes. So in essence, you don't really retain a lot of detail in the photos, but the iPhone tries to make it look as best as possible with as much processing as possible. HEIF Max is a step up from this, where it reduces the amount of processing, it reduces the amount of compression, and it takes advantage of the 48 megapixel sensor. It retains a lot more detail in a larger file size of around 5 megabytes, and has less of a smart HDR application on top of the image to make it more true to life in the moment where you captured it. Finally, you've got Pro Max, which is full-blown RAW, using the entire 48 megapixels and saving an image file size of around 75 megabytes and up. This one has the least amount of compression and will retain the most detail. Personally, I've found that HEIF Max and Pro Max images are not really that different. Even when you're heavily zooming in with HEIF Max, it still retains a ton of detail, and in my personal opinion, you don't really need Pro Max. HEIF Max is kind of a really nice middle ground between the super processed No Max and the heavily uncompressed RAW. HEIF Max also will allow for easier editing because of the file size being a little bit larger, but that's really all the major differences you need to know.